Hey, how's it going? My name's Alyssa Cohen, and I am a functional diagnostic health coach. So I help women who struggle with hormone imbalance, and I use functional lab testing and health coaching to help women who struggle with fatigue, PMS, irregular cycles, difficulty with fertility, anxiety, depression, acne, things like that. And I help them regulate their hormones so that they can feel wonderful and, really live the best life possible. So today I wanted to talk about, last week I talked about why I got off the birth control, which really kind of started my journey with this holistic hormone balancing business, and why I chose to get off the birth control pill, some of the risks associated with the birth control pill, some of the side effects that we can get from the birth control pill that we aren't educated on, that we don't know about it when we're put on the pill, and so 10 years later when we want to go off, we're all messed up and we don't know why or where that all came from. So that's what I talked about last week. So this week, in response to that, I was like, man, I should probably talk about, your alternatives to the birth control pill, because a lot of us don't want to get pregnant. Whether we're married or we're single, getting pregnant is just not something for us right now in our lives. And so getting off the birth control pill sounds really scary and not like a good option, because you want that safety net of getting off the or having that birth control there. So, I'm going to talk about some of the options that are out there in terms of, some more natural approaches, or even some still hormonal approaches, but maybe less negative side effects than the birth control pill. I will say that this is not medical advice. I am not an expert on this by any means, but, I do have some experience in this, and I'm just going to give you some of your options and tell you what's out there, and then you can certainly go do your own research, ask more questions. You can ask me questions, ask your doctor questions, things like that. But it's good to be educated and know what's going on. So, if you are like me, I do not want to get pregnant. Pregnancy is not something I want in my life right now, and so I'm still, wanting to know ways to not get pregnant, but also not be on hormonal birth control. So the first option, and the thing that I have educated myself on significantly, I use this book, Taking Charge of Your Fertility by Tony Weschler. That was one of the ways that I really started educating myself in the first place. And what she talks about in this book is basically natural family planning, the fertility awareness method, which is different than, I guess, what do we call it? The calendar method or the rhythm method, things like that. There's a big difference. So with the natural family planning and fertility awareness method, what we're looking at is basal body temperature, so taking your temperature in the morning. Also looking at noticing cervical fluid, the amount, the texture, the consistency, things like that. And then also, if you want to add in there, you can feel your cervix every day and feel the height of it, and also the firmness of it, which is also going to help you track where you are in your cycle and your ovulation. So what we're trying to do is not have sex or unprotected sex when you are around that ovulation period. So around ovulation, if we can predict when you're ovulating, you are fertile 5 to 7 days around that, and so you want to either avoid sex or have protected sex 7 to 9 days around that period, depending on how, sure you feel about that fertile ovulation window. So this is essentially what we're getting when we're looking at the fertility awareness method. We're creating a chart like this. So this is your the temperatures. This is a sample chart. This woman took her temperature for every day of her cycle. This is the beginning of her cycle, so when she's menstruating. This is after menstruation, but we see this spike in temperature, which would indicate that's when we ovulate. So around this period, that 7 to 9 day period, is when you're wanting to, so you can see here actually, this is her when she had sex or didn't have sex. She didn't have any days circled here, so she didn't have sex in this window when she didn't want to get pregnant. Or, you know, you can use physical barriers like condoms and things like that if you're not wanting to get pregnant during that time. So, natural family planning, fertility awareness method, that's like the first method that you can use to predict ovulation and therefore predict the days that you are fertile and not engage in sexual activity or, you know, use protection on those days. And actually, when you use temperature, cervical fluid, and cervix position all together and chart those, is 98% effective. So if you're doing it correctly and are educated in how to do it, it is quite effective. There's some like technological tools now that you can use to help predict ovulation and track that. And there's something called the Lady Comp, but I did a little bit more deeper research on something called the Daisy, which is a machine. You can hook it up with your phone or sync it to your phone, I guess. You measure your temperature every morning, but I think that you maybe only have to do it for 3 to 6 months, but it starts to track your cycles for you. So you don't have to enter it in that little chart like I was showing you. You don't have to enter it in your phone and know for yourself, like, oh, look at my temperature is going up. It basically tells you. So there's a yellow light where if the machine gives you a yellow light, it's like still learning your cycle, and it takes 3 to 6 months to learn your cycle depending on how even or consistent it is. If it gives you a red light, those are your fertile days, so you're either want to have sex those days, I guess, or you want to not have sex or use protection. Green light means that those are your safe or infertile days. And then there's a purple light that comes on, which are your menstruation days. So the Daisy is, you know, I think it said it was 93% effective, maybe. But that's another great option that if you don't feel like tracking or learning how to do all that business, it's a way that makes it a lot easier for you and uses technology to your advantage. You can't use it if you are taking the birth control pill because that really kind of messes with everything. You're not going to have even consistent temperatures that it can track. But I guess if you're taking the birth control pill, then you really don't need to know when you're ovulating because it's not really relevant because you're not ovulating. So, the difficulty with using the natural family planning and that kind of thing, if your cycles are really irregular, it can be hard to track and know when you're ovulating, and you might have huge temperature fluctuations, which are going to be harder to see that rise in temperature when you're ovulating. If you just got off the pill, you're probably not going to be quite regulated, and it's going to be more difficult to track and know when you're fertile or ovulating. And then if you're breastfeeding, that can kind of mess with temperatures and things like that and make things a little bit more difficult. But this is what I use. I found taking my temperature in the morning really useful, really insightful, really helpful for me to just keep track of where I am with my cycle and be more educated about myself so that I can use that to empower myself, really. So there are other hormonal birth control options that are less destructive than the pill can be. So one of these is the progestin-only pill. So this kind of pill, some birth control pills are only estrogen, and it can cause estrogen dominance and all these hormonal imbalances, or worsen hormonal imbalances, I guess. There is a pill that you can take that's progesterone only, which is a little bit less detrimental to our overall hormone balance and not throwing things so far out of whack. I mean, it's still going to have some of the similar side effects, and you know, and it kind of turns your body off from producing its own hormones, but it does, you know, it's a little less detrimental. So progesterone-only pills. You can actually get an implant under your skin where it is going to be releasing progesterone on a consistent basis. I mean, you're going to have some similar risk factors with this, where your body kind of forgets how to produce its own hormones. You know, you're having not, what am I trying to say? They're not similar to the hormones that your body produces, and so your body gets confused. It's going to stop producing its own progesterone, and it's in there for 3 years, and so it's, you know, you have these hormones circulating in your body, and it can kind of throw off your hormones when you end up taking out the implant 3 years later or whatever. So again, side effects associated with this. Another option is a hormonal IUD. So Mirena, things like that, they mostly use progesterone, and so the progesterone prevents ovulation. So that's an option too. Just like the progesterone only pill, when it's progesterone only, there's less side effects associated with it. There's less risk of cancer and things like that. There's less risk of estrogen dominance. But there are some risk factors associated with an IUD in general. It can become implanted in the wall of the uterus. It can cause, I think it can cause endometriosis and things like that. But there's some sorts of implantation and perforation of the uterus and some kind of far-fetched risk factors, but there's risks associated with it in general. My friend Melissa just pointed out to me too that there's some new IUDs out there, some hormonal IUDs that have lower levels of progesterone. Kylena and Liletta, Kyleena, and then Liletta, lower levels of progesterone. So, as little hormone as you can put in your body as possible, as little of that exogenous hormone as you can put in your body as possible, the better. So those are good options if you're wanting to use an IUD. And then another option too is using a copper IUD. So the idea with the copper IUD is that the copper kills sperm, is toxic to sperm, and so it prevents pregnancy that way. Again, risks with the IUD include uterine perforation, implantation into the uterine wall, things like that. But most women seem to have pretty good success with this. I mean, when you're putting copper into your body, too, the copper's not just going to stay in the uterus and cervix and things like that. It's going to go throughout their body. So there are you can get higher levels of copper in your body, too, which causes its own issues in terms of balance with other minerals and things like that. So that causes its own issues. And, in my perspective and the way that I want to treat or use things in my body, I want to put as little things in my body that shouldn't be there. I don't want to be having copper in my body. I don't want to be having external sources of hormones in my body, but that's the way that I want for myself. But I'm also married, and I have much more control over my sex life, I feel like. If you're single and you're dating and things like that, it's a little bit more difficult to control the days when you want to have sex and things like that. And so having an IUD or something in there that you just can kind of have there and forget about it and feel like you're safe and not going to get pregnant, maybe that's a good option for you. And it's something to consider, do some research on, talk to your doctor about, and figure out which of these options is the best for you and your lifestyle and what you feel good about. But I would say regardless of what you choose, read this book. I think that it's really important, and my message is to, in terms of sexual health and, empowering women, I think it's the most empowering not to be able to take birth control and have that right. I mean, that's great, and, I want people to have every right and ability to do what they want, but I think it's most empowering to be in control of our bodies, know when it is doing what, and be able to make the choices that align with our values. And so knowing the days that you're ovulating and knowing how your cycle works and how it affects your body and being really in tune with that, I think that's empowering, and I think it's awesome. So I would ask you to educate yourself and start there. But if you have any questions, I would love to hear them. You can comment below. Or if you're struggling with getting off of birth control, or if you're having hormonal imbalance yourself and have questions about this, I would love to talk to you about that too, because this is my mission, to educate women on this and help women who struggle with hormonal imbalance or getting off birth control and things like that. So questions or comments below, I'd love to hear them. And we'll talk to you next Sunday. Happy Easter! Bye!